Okay. Akun, do you want to say hi to everyone before we start?
Yeah, hi.
Because you will be doing a crucial job today.
I already said hi to Professor Jain.
Yeah.
Good evening, Professor
Good
Mishra.
evening. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll be screening the questions, and I'm looking forward to a very insightful discussion. I'm not from management, but I hope to learn. I mean, I'm still learning from all the case
Great.
studies and everything, but yeah. So look forward to it.
Wonderful. Okay. So Mayank, can we start now?
Lopa, it's live.
Yeah,
I checked.
great. Yeah. All right. Okay. So I get to do a very crucial thing in the beginning itself. Okay, so participants are still joining. We have about 88 and the count is on with us so far. All right, so it is our pleasure to welcome you all to the webinar on use of stories in management education, hosted by the Center for Teaching and Learning, IIM Bangalore. And we are extremely honored and thrilled, equally thrilled to have Professor Kamal K. Jain as the keynote speaker. Professor Jain has taught courses in the OB and HR area at various prestigious and eminent institutions in India and abroad. He has held various academic and administrative positions and roles during his 40 years of teaching career. He's currently the mentor and coach to the Dean Academic at the IIM Raipur. We welcome you, Professor Jain.
Thank you. Thank you.
We also have with us Professor Sushanta K. Mishra, who wears many hats at IIMB. Professor, I'll just tell you why I said that. Professor Mishra is a faculty, of course, in the OB and HR area here at IIM Bangalore. He's also the chairperson for our center, the Center for Teaching and Learning, CDoctor, which essentially processes the cases that we publish through the Harvard Business Publishing. And he's also the chairperson for the research and publications area. We welcome you also, Professor.
Thank you, madam.
Now I'll tell a little about the format of today's webinar, and will take precisely maybe 1 or 2 minutes. We would first see Professor Jain presenting his thoughts, his opening thoughts on the topic, and then we will witness brilliant and enriching conversation between Professor Jain and Professor Mishra. The last 10 to 15 minutes we have kept for addressing your questions. And for that, we request and encourage you to post, the topic specific and relevant questions on the chat window, if possible, along with your thoughts and comments on the session, on our speaker, on CTL's various initiatives, etc. Yeah, so now it's time to hand over the session to today's speaker, Professor Jain, and the CTL chair, Professor Sushanta K. Mishra. Over to you both.
Thank you. Professor Jain, you want to have some opening remarks?
Okay. So before we begin this session, I have my opening remarks for Professor Lok Mudra, who introduced me. And what I would like to say is that sometimes you have stories, sometimes you don't have stories. And when you don't have stories, then you have to cook stories. And those who often do a great job in cooking stories are the ones who have to introduce the speaker. And today, this job was very well done by Professor Mudra. So thank you very much. And let me also tell you that this was the second best introduction I have ever received. The best one was when the MC did not arrive and I had to introduce myself. Right. So this is my, I just want to, compliment Professor Mudra for inviting me for this session and for introducing me. My opening remark is already there in the slides. It's a very profound statement which says, without air our cells die, and without stories our cells die. And we want to keep this session more interactive, and therefore I would probably request Professor Sushant that whatever question right in the order that he wants to have, we can just go according to that. So Sushant, over to you.
Thanks, Professor Kamal, and welcome to IIM Bangalore. Our webinar series hosted by the Center for Teaching and Learning. Before we start, I have a query. Since how long you are using storytelling as a pedagogy?
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit of history about this. I think when probably I was 5-year-old and we were a joint family, my father, my uncle, right, and we were some 4 or 5 siblings of the same age. My elder brother was 15 years of age at that time. And in the evening, we all will wait for him when he will come before we go to bed. And the only reason we waited for him was that in the evening, he will tell us a story. And we always used to wait for him. Now that generated some interest in storytelling, and therefore I started reading those Hindi magazines like Parag, Nandan, Channamama, and then gradually developed interest in literature and read about Munshi Premchand. I read almost every story of Munshi Premchand and his novels, and then Shilal Shuk, and then Madhavi Verma, right, Sumitra Nandan Pant, Surikant Kubati Nirala, Amrita Preetham, and so on and so forth. And when I was doing my graduation, one of my professor, he used to, tell stories in the classroom, and that was a kind of role model for us. And for me in particular, that was a kind of role model. And the moment I joined my academics in 1976, subconsciously I was inspired by this technique of storytelling. So it is 1960 onwards, so you can say almost 47 years that I have been using this storytelling as a pedagogue.
Thank you very much, Professor Jain. Now, if you look at today's academics, a lot of changes are happening. For example, the pandemic, we moved from physical to the online classes. The national education policy, the new education policy, that is also changing the way we are looking at things. So what is your thoughts about the role of instructors in higher education and more so in management education?
So I will take your question in 2 parts. The first is the education per se, and then we will talk about management education.
Yeah.
So when we talk about education, and particularly with the current generation and the kind of environment that we are in, I would probably like to say that for me, an instructor has 2 most important functions to perform. And according to me, the first one is to make known things interesting. And second, interesting things known. Right? So as an instructor, our primary responsibility is to make known things interesting. And why do I say this? Because today knowledge is all available. And thank God, now you have ChatGPT. Right? The knowledge is available in abundance. You don't need that knowledge. But if you're in a class, the question is the same knowledge, how do you deliver so that the statement that making known things interesting, right, becomes relevant. I remember there was a guy who went to a philosopher and straightly asked him this question. And the question was, hey, tell me, what is the heart of education? Right? What is the heart of education? And this philosopher responded by saying that the heart of education is the education of heart. And what he wanted to convey to this was that our education probably, trains our left brain, but the right brain, where, the stories, the connect with the audience has to happen, is missing. And I say this because probably it will be good for me to explain again with the help of a story. So there was a guy who had a parrot, and this was not an ordinary parrot. So what he did was he started teaching this parrot all the subjects of management, and to his great surprise, this parrot learned almost everything, including Professor Sushant, our course like OB, right, marketing, finance, and whatnot. Now, having worked so hard with the parrot, this guy went to the king and said, look, I have a parrot, and I worked very hard, and today this parrot can answer any question on management. If you want to test, you can test his knowledge. The king said, look, I don't want to test your knowledge this way. Let us have an open house. People will come, they will ask questions. And if your parrot can answer those questions, I will definitely like to reward you. So the day was fixed. On the appointed day and time, the show begins. The first question comes from the audience. What is management? And the parrot was trained to answer this question. The answer was, management is the art of getting things done. A big round of applause from the audience. Wow, what a great answer from the parrot. And to the great surprise of everyone, this parrot could answer all those questions. So when the show was over, this guy went to the king and said, sir, now are you convinced that this parrot is a great scholar? And the king said, yes, my dear, I'm convinced that this parrot is a great scholar, but I would also like to say one thing. You are saying that this parrot is a great scholar. I will say, to me, all scholars are great parrots.
Nice.
Now, I hope you know what I'm trying to convey is that we look like a scholar because we all have a second-hand knowledge, unless we bring something of our own. And that can happen when you bring some kind of surprise, some kind of element. That probably is what I'm saying, how to make known things interesting. Right? Now, since we talked about education, let me tell you that according to me, the three roles of an instructor are very important. Number one, we have to accept the fact that each learner is different. And Sushant, let me tell you that today, whatever I'm discussing here, my objective is not to give any gyan. Okay, what I'm trying to discuss is that if I want to discuss anything related to any topic, I will have a story around that which can be used to explain that particular concept. So for example, when I talk about these three important principles, each learner is different, don't overload, make things simple, I have a story for each one of this. And just to quickly give you the meaning and understanding of this concept, for example, when I say each learner is different. So what happened? There was a guy who went to Buddha and he straightly asked him this question. And the question was, sir, is there a God? And Buddha said, no. A few minutes later, there was another guy who went to Buddha and asked the same question, is there a God? And this time Buddha said, yes. A few minutes later, there was another guy who went to him and again asked this question, is there a God? And this time, Buddha simply kept quiet. He did not say anything. All his followers, they were watching this. And when this happened, they all asked Buddha, sir, how you can give three different answers for the same question? How you can give three different answers? So Buddha said, let me explain you. You know, the first guy when he came to me and asked, is there a God? I said, no. He was a believer in God. And if I would have said yes, the belief is confirmed. And now there is no need for inquiry. And therefore, I said no to him. And there was another guy when he came to me and said, is there a God? And I said, yes. He did not believe in God. Right? He did not believe in God. So I said, right, yes. So he will also get confused and therefore probably he would like to explore. And the third guy was very simple, right? I thought I will not like to pollute his mind. Let him explore first and then we will see, right, whether he needs an answer for this. So what I'm saying is, no, the answer to a question does not depend on the question. The answer also depends on who is asking the question, right? And therefore, because each learner is different, the stories bring that element. You know, somebody like visual, somebody like hearing, some people like aesthetic. So the story probably helps you bridge that particular gap. And second, when I say don't overload, again, in the name of, rigor, we have started overloading our content. And I have a story to explain that how much overloading is bad for us. So there was a school and there were 40 students in the class. So when the teacher went to take the class, the 39 of those students have disappeared from the class. So there was only one student. So the teacher, having seen only one student, he said, you are the only one for the class. So I think I will cancel the class. So this boy said to the instructor, sir, if you don't mind, can I ask you one question? He said, okay, please ask. So this boy asked the instructor, saying, sir, suppose you have 40 cows and it is time to give them feed. You go there to feed those 40 cows. And when you go there, you find that 39 of the cows have disappeared. Will you feed the 40th cow or you will not feed the 40th cow? the teacher realized the profound meaning in this. That what he wanted to say was, if I am the only one, why do you want to deprive me from the learning? So the teacher was overwhelmed. The class went on for 2-3 hours, and when the class was over, the teacher asked this boy, "So how do you like my teaching?" So he said, "Sir, I like your teaching, but I don't like you." So again, teacher asked him, "Hey, why?" So the boy said, "Sir, if you don't mind, can I ask you one question?" He said, "Yes, please ask." So this boy asked the teacher, "Sir, suppose there are 40 cows and it is time to feed them. And when you go there to feed those 40 cows, 39 of those cows, they have disappeared. Now, will you feed the 40th cow, the leftover cow, with the food of all the 40 cows?" Now, this is what overloading is, right? And this overloading we can also explain with the help of this story. The story is there is a rodent, we can call it. They are known as lemmings. The story goes that the lemmings jump off the cliff and they commit suicide. They deliberately jump off the cliff and commit suicide. So the scientist once asked the lemmings, "Why do you kill yourself by deliberately running off a cliff?" And the lemming quips, he doesn't understand why you humans do not commit suicide. So the scientist answered, he said, "We can safely tell the lemmings that to do, but just that instead of jumping off a cliff, we send our children to court." So our way of suicide is very different from your way of suicide, right? And the third one that I was saying, that make things simple. I don't think we need to explain this. We have seen a movie, right, where this guy talks about what is a machine.
What is a machine?
So I don't want to run this video. We have all seen this, and we know that when he gave a very simple answer, machine is anything that saves our time, something like this, he was not happy, and he wanted a very technical answer from him. And then the story from this movie. Okay.
This movie was there at IIM Bangalore campus.
Yes. And your second was that how do we use in management education? So I am taking a typical case of teaching leadership, right? Just to illustrate that how do we use the stories in management education. So let's say if I have to take a session on leadership and I want to talk about two things. One, that leadership is comprises of two things. One, as a leader, you must have new ideas. And number two, you must be able to sell those ideas. Why new ideas? Because the word leadership itself means that you have to be at the forefront. You have to be ahead of others. Now, when I say you have to be ahead of others, this
Some
means
noise is coming.
yeah, some noise, yes. So what I'm saying is, when we talk about leadership, the word itself implies that you must be ahead of others. You cannot be a follower, right? And when I say new idea, this means somebody else may have a new idea, and once it gets implemented, you can also copy this. But then you have no more right to say that you are a leader, right? You have a right to say that you are a leader only if you take initiative. And particularly in the present context, when the change is happening at a very fast pace, very disruptive change, I think we cannot keep pace with the change. Others do this, then we follow this. Others do this, then we follow this. You simply cannot afford to do that. Therefore, we must have new ideas. So what I'm saying is, there are two ways in which change happens. One, when change happens outside, then you bring change inside. And the second is, we bring change from inside. Now, let me share a story here. There was a Zen master. He went to USA and he ordered for a pizza. So pizza was given to him. He gave a $10 bill and he was hoping that he will get some change. But the cashier did not give him any change. So this Zen master asked the cashier, "Hey, where is my change?" And the cashier from the other side replied, saying, "Sir, it's very strange to me. You are a Zen master and you don't even know that the change should come from within. Right? You are a Zen master, you don't even know that the change should come from within. Right? So the first is the new ideas. Second is the buy-in of those ideas. Right? And before we come to that, if you have to have new ideas, two qualities are very necessary. One, you must have courage. Right? You must be daring. And second, you must be very caring. If you want to take any new change or any new initiative, please understand that people will not be able to accept that in the first go. And unless you have the courage to go ahead with this, you will not be successful as a leader. How do we explain courage? So there was a sermon going on, and there was a spiritual guru, and he was talking about courage. He spoke almost for half an hour on courage. So there was a very young boy sitting in the sermon, and he stood up and said, "Sir, you have been speaking on courage for last half an hour, but I'm not able to understand anything. So can you explain me with the help of some example?" So he said, "Okay, I will explain this with the help of an example." So this spiritual guru talking to this boy, he said, "Suppose there are 40 children like you, and you all go to a hill station in the month of January, and the temperature is minus 20 degrees Celsius. Whole day you have been moving around in the city. In the evening, when you come back to your hotel, the temperature has already gone down to minus 30 degrees Celsius. You're all shivering with cold and you are badly tired. And therefore, the moment you come back to your hotel, you go back to your room, you cover yourself in blanket and you go to sleep. But one of you, before going to his room, he sits on the floor, he offers prayers, he remembers God, and then he goes to bed. To me, this is courage." This boy said, "Sir, if you don't mind, can I give you my example of courage?" So he said, "Okay, tell me." So this boy said, talking to this spiritual guru, saying, "Sir, suppose there are 40 spiritual gurus like you, and you all go to a hill station in the month of January. The temperature is minus 20 degrees Celsius. Whole day you have been moving around in the city. In the evening, when you come back to your hotel, the temperature has already gone down to minus 30 degrees Celsius. You are all tired, you are shivering with cold, and therefore, when you come back to your hotel, even though you are tired, you are shivering with cold, you all sit on the floor, you offer prayers, you remember God, then you go to bed. But one of you, without offering prayers to God, directly goes to bed. To me, this is also courage. Right? Which means doing something which is not expected of. Right? And then when I say caring, why caring is also important, and how does it work? For example, you must have seen this picture.
प्रयासों से अनेक बार चुनौतियां आने के बाद देखिए पुष्पांजलि अर्पित करने इन कर्मयोगियों के ऊपर, इन संपूर्णियों के ऊपर, इन संसाधकों के ऊपर अद्भुत समूह के राष्ट्र की ओर से पुष्पांजलि अर्पित कर रहे हैं। इनके कार्य
We have seen this video, right? When the Kashi Vishwanath temple, right, and Modi visited that temple, all the workers who have worked there, right, he simply threw flowers on them. It was a message that we care for you. How do you think any one of these workers can forget this gesture of Mr. Modi? Right? It's a very strong message that we care for you. Right? So that is the part, that is the first part. And second, when I was talking about for buy-in, I will say one, compliment. Mark Twain said, "I can live on a compliment for 6 months." Right? And again, how compliment works, we all are witness to this, how appreciation works in our life. We as human, this is one of our needs, we need an appreciation. And once again, I have this video again, right?
मेरी संसद मेरा घर, जो पानी से नहाती है वो सिर्फ लिबास बदलती है, जो पसीने से नहाते हैं वो ही इतिहास बदलते हैं। जिन्होंने नया इतिहास रचा वो श्रमजीवी भाई आज यहाँ मौजूद हैं और प्रधानमंत्री जी से सादर अनुरोध कि उनका अभिनंदन करें।
So this video was taken when Prime Minister Modi inaugurated the Parliament building, and all those workers who were there, he felicitated them by giving them a shawl. Okay. Second, if you go to Indore, there is a very popular road, and you will notice one thing. Every 3 to 6 months, you will find a hoarding, and this hoarding will have a picture of an employee who has created a wow movement for the company, and a full-size hoarding on the main road of Indore. You can see this. When this guy, his picture was posted, was there on the hoarding, he said, I did not know that this is what has happened. But then what I can say is, this was a kind of feeling which I can never explain. The workplace and the culture make it Infosys means my family, but this degree of appreciation is next level. And you know, the moment he noticed his hoarding, he took all his friends, relatives, right, to that side. You know, please come along with me. I want to show you something. And he felt so great about this. Now, these are, I mean, what I'm saying is, one simple thank you note, yes, is good enough. But then there are other ways and means in which we can appreciate and compliment others. Right? So, one. Second, frame. What I want to discuss here is that, look, if you want to have people buy in, you have to present your case in a manner that you get a yes. And when I say framing, the primary message behind this is from this statement from Joseph Conrad, who said, he who wants to persuade should put his trust not in the right argument, but in the right word. That means the choice of words. Every word matters. And how do you present your case? The answer, the result will depend on that. To give you one example how framing works, let's say there are two showrooms side by side, and they are dealing in second-hand car. Outside one showroom, there is a signboard that reads showroom for second-hand cars. And outside second showroom, the signboard reads the showroom for pre-owned cars. Now, suddenly you find that more customers go to that showroom where the signboard says pre-owned car. But as a matter of fact, pre-owned car also means the second-hand car, right? But then the word, the choice of word that you use can have an impact. Okay. A very popular story. There was a guy who went to his spiritual guru and straightway he asked him this question. And the question was, sir, can I smoke when I'm meditating? He said, no, have you gone mad? How you can do this? Right? The question was, can I smoke when I'm meditating? He said, no. A few minutes later, there was another guy who went to the same person and again asked him the same question. But the way he asked the question was, sir, can I meditate when I'm smoking? He said, yes. So will you get yes or will you get no for the question will depend how do you ask the question. And this commercial very nicely explains that.
मैं पढ़ाई करते करते थोड़ा ये है आम मैं देखते देखते थोड़ी पढ़ाई कर लूं। चिंटू के पापा हाँ बेटा शाबाश ये है Precautions.
Sushant, the audio was clear?
Yeah, I can hear this.
Okay. So I'm sure, you know, once we see this commercial, we understand that how the way the question was framed, you know, impacted the thought process of the mother. Right? The same question, but the way this was asked. Right? And as a leader, we have to understand that every word matters for people, and therefore the choice of word is to be there with great care. There is a very interesting story here that there was a guy who went to his boss and said, I have an offer from another company which gives me 50,000 more. So please increase my salary, otherwise I will quit. And the boss was so upset about this. He said, okay, quit. Right? But then there's another guy, the same person, the same boss, he went to him, and what he said was, sir, I like this company, I like you, I want to stay here. But I have an offer from another company which pays me 50,000 more. So please increase my salary. So the first one used the frame quit, and the second one used the frame stay. So obviously, when you say I will quit, what is the message you are giving? Right? A threat. Nobody likes it. Okay. And you are saying that for me, the only thing that matters is the money. And the second one said, no, money is important, but this company is also important for me. Right. So there was, there was situation when, you write a mail to someone, and when you get a reply, you realize that the person has misunderstood you. So you want to write back. You can say that I think you have misunderstood me. But the great leader, they don't do this. What they will say is, I think I failed to explain you. The difference between the two is very mild. You will say, you have misunderstood me. What you are saying is, you are the problem. But when you say that, I think I failed to explain you take the responsibility, you take the onus. Right? Now, that is what I'm saying. Now, of course, when we talk about buy-in, there are so many things that we can talk about, but I just wanted to give you a demo that how stories can be used in explaining the concepts of leadership. Right? So over to you, Srishant.
Thanks, Professor Jain. You shared some examples about some concepts. You talk about framing, you talk about the choice of words and all that thing. But when we use this pedagogy, there might be some inherent risks involved. I wanted to communicate some concepts, but the students may take it in a different way. So when I am involving in this pedagogy, how do I ensure that my themes, my concepts are actually understood the same way I want it to be?
Okay. I think that's very interesting. See, as an individual, you yourself, you read a story 2 times. The first time, you will get a different meaning. Second time, you will get a different meaning. You read a story as a child. You read the same story as an adult. The meaning that you will get from the story may be very, very different. Imagine a movie like Dangal. Right? You are watching this movie Dangal, and there are athletes who are being tortured by his father. If you are a child, you will relate with the child. How bad is the father? Right? But if you are a father, you will relate with the father in order to make the career of his children. You know how much labor, how much effort he has put in. Right? So what I'm saying is the moral of the story may be very, very different for different people. And therefore, whenever we share a story, we always take a pause and ask the people, so what do you think is the moral of the story? Right? I can share you with, for example, this one example here. Okay, 1 minute. No, not this one. Okay, anyway, so what I'm saying is there is the frame of reference, right? And therefore, this is something important. And in terms of the precaution that one has to take, let me tell you that impact and understanding depend on the frame of the mind of the listener. So this is one very popular movie, and there is a reference from this movie.
अगर कहानी से कोई चटपटी चीज खाई जाए तो कहानी भी चटपटी हो जाती है। क्यों? मैं से लाई हूँ गरमा गरम। हाँ, तो एक किसान था जो अपने परिवार के साथ बहुत ही उसके 2 बच्चे, एक बच्चे का नाम था रामू और दूसरे बच्चे का नाम था कमल, दूसरे का नाम था और पापालाल चटर्जी गुजरात नमन जिला प्रसाद। क्या था नाम? क्या हुआ, रामू जो है कुएं में गिर गया। तो अभी मान लेके देख लिया तो खाते में बच्चे से बात करती और कहने लगी सुनो सुनो रामू कुएं में गिर पड़ा। किसान बोला क्या, रामू कुएं में गिर पड़ा? वो जो जिसे भागा तो सीधा कुएं के पास छलांग लगाई और सीधा रामू को बाहर था। रामू जो है कुछ से बच गया। कुछ दिनों बाद क्या हुआ, क्या था उनका नाम, दूसरे का नाम था और बाबरलाल खट्टर से पूजाराम जीजाबाई जीना प्रसाद। तो वो मिल गई, उसकी माँ ने फिर से देख लिया तो भागते हुए किसान के पास गई और कहने लगी सुनो सुनो और बाबरलाल खट्टर से जीना प्रसाद कुएं में गिर गया। बच्चों की माँ को भी था और जोर से रोने लगी। किसान कुएं की ओर भागा और कुएं में जा कूदा, लेकिन बेचारे बच्चे का नाम लेते लेते माँ बाप को इतना वक्त लग गया कि तब तक हर बाबरलाल खट्टर से पूजाराम जीजाबाई जीना प्रसाद कुएं में डूब के मार दिया। कहानी की कुछ
So one of the child, what he learned from this was, if you have a long name, then you should not go near the well. Right? But actually the message was that your name should be small, right? But then the child got a different message. So I think it is important that we check with the audience that what is your understanding of the story? What is the moral of the story? And that will give you some clarification in terms of any kind of confusion. And also I would like to say that in case we have to take some precautions, right? This is what we have to take care. One, the story cannot be too long. Otherwise people lose interest in that. We have to make sure that we make it as crisp as possible. And I think one of the skills that we have to develop is how do we eliminate the unnecessary part from the story? And when I say the unnecessary part, let me share a story with you. There was a guy who used to make statues of the god. So and he used to make beautiful statues of the god. The people went to him and they asked him, "Sir, how do you make so beautiful statues of the god?" And he said, "Who says I make the statues of the god? I don't make statues of the god. I only remove what is not God. I only remove what is not God." Now, what I'm saying is in the story also, we have to realize that what is not God, okay, which has to be taken away from the story so that you can convey your story in 1 or 2 minutes. A long story will distract your audience, right? Second, it has to be relevant. Don't use a story for the sake of it. Okay, it has to be relevant to the topic that you are discussing and relevant to the audience. And it should not be a very common story. You begin a story and everyone knows about this, right? So no one will enjoy that. It has to be something new for the audience. Okay, some common stories, like if you want to talk about, the crow and so those kind of old stories, nobody would be interested. And even if you want to use those old stories, you have to improvise them, right? And ensure that you do not forget. What do you think will happen when you start a story and then you forget what was the next part? Okay, and again, there is a very interesting story to explain this idea. There were 2 trainers, and one of them was very successful. The other one was not. So he wanted to understand the reason for the success of this successful trainer. So what he did was, he registered as a participant in the program of the successful trainer. So to see what he does. So the successful trainer, when the session started, he started with the story and he said, "Hey, ladies and gentlemen, do you know that the best years of my life were spent in the arms of a lady who was not even my wife. She was my mother." There was a big round of applause from the audience. Wow, what a great way to start the session. And this unsuccessful trainer thought, now I know the secret. So he was doing the program and he thought he will use the same story. So he started the same story saying that, ladies and gentlemen, do you know that the best years of my life were spent in the arms of a lady who was not even my wife? And then he forgot the next part. Right? He tried to recollect, but then he was not able to recollect. And finally he said, who was this? I don't know. Right? इतना जूता पड़ा उसको कि आप imagine भी नहीं कर सकते. Okay. So you have to make sure that you don't forget. And just to give you a reference, for example, if you look at this slide, at the bottom, you may notice one very small font, something written here. How do you make? Now, my suggestion is that in case you feel that you are likely to forget the story, can give a reference somewhere in the slide at the bottom so that you know that at this stage you have to use that story. Okay, it will be, let's say when I was talking about caring and I'm not able to recollect what story I'm going to use. Imagine if on the slide, today technology enables you, on the slide you have written a slide, is one or two liner, which will give you an idea, yes, this is the story which I'm going to share. It will be of great help. And the most important, it should not be offending to any member of your audience. We may have, for example, Sardar jokes, right? You have to be extremely careful about those. Right? Your jokes may relate to different communities, different religion. You have to make sure that that particular story, that particular fable that you are going to use will not offend that particular set of audience. So these are some of the precautions that one has to take while using the stories. Right?
Right. Thank you, Professor Jain. I got an interesting question from the audience.
Okay.
The question is, the attention span of our new generation kids are actually going down. It's very less, right? Can you provide some tips how to make them connect with the story? One, what I heard from telling is, make it is very short, crisp, so that you can do that, right? And also you said it should be relevant to the topic of the discussion, right? Anything beyond that, if you have some ideas?
I would say that use of multimedia, for example, right? Imagine some small videos that I have in my presentation. Okay. One is that I'm narrating the story, right? The other is, there is a video. This video may relate to anything. This may relate to a commercial. This may relate to a TV serial. This may relate to TV, movies, or this may relate to some news item. You can pick up from anywhere. So that use of multimedia will be of great help if we can bring that into our presentation.
Yes. The other question I have received is, what is the difference between storytelling and case method of teaching? You are narrating a story and we are discussing a case. What is the difference?
See, I think I'm not interested in the academic discussion, in terms of typical theory, how do we explain the difference between a story and a case study? I'm not more interested in that kind of academic discussion. My objective is that we must be able to see the relevance of a story and case study. They are complementary, right? But if you ask me the difference, I will say that stories are primarily driven by the instructor. But the very nature of the case study is that it has to be driven by the participants. Right? However, there are stories which you can use as a method of discussion. For example, if you have this question given to the class, who do you think is responsible for Sita's abduction? Right? Is it Ram? Is it Raman? Is it Lakshman? Is it Kekai? Is it Kurpa? Right? So many people there. And you will find that everyone will have their different point of view. Someone will say, I think that who is responsible. Someone will say, this person is responsible. So if you want to generate debate, you can use those stories also. And the advantage is, in India, most of the people, they know about, for example, I have not to tell you the whole story, what happened with Sita and so on and so forth. My one-liner question that, who do you think is responsible for Sita's abduction? I think most of us will know about that. What happened in the entire episode, and then how do we decide that who is responsible? Right?
One more question I got. It's a very interesting question. Well, when I talk about OB or soft skills, yes, I can give those stories, people can relate to it. But if I am offering a course which is quant based, quantitative techniques or economics or hardcore finance, right? Is it possible to bring stories? And then, if I bring stories, how do I prepare for those type of stories? Is it possible, first of all? I mean,
I would say that not necessarily that every discipline is cut for stories, but I know for sure today in every discipline there are stories available and you can use them. I can give you one demonstration, for example here. This video is from Kota, the Kota classes, and this guy teaches a particular subject, and try to see how he makes his class interesting, right? By using stories related to his concepts, right? So just watch this.
उसके पहले बोलता है कि इनऑर्गेनिक केमिस्ट्री वो डेंजर को कॉम्प्लिकेटेड छोड़ दूंगा। मैंने कहा भाई कॉम्प्लिकेटेड तो तुम्हारी गर्लफ्रेंड भी है, उसे छोड़ देते हो? नहीं ना? क्या करते हो उसके साथ? उसे अटेंशन देते हो, फोकस करते हो, उसे प्यार से बात करते हो, सोना मोना बापू जादू टोना। ये देखा, ये सुन के पीछे का बजा आ गया। हाँ, बहुत हंस रहा है भाई, खड़ा हो। गर्लफ्रेंड है? नहीं है, मुझे आश्चर्य भी नहीं है। बैठ जा। तो जैसे हमारा भाई अकेला है, वैसे ही अकेला है यहाँ बोरॉन। अब बोरॉन तो कमी है इलेक्ट्रॉन्स की, पर साथ वो दे ही नहीं रहा। क्या करेंगे? अकेला बैठ गया क्या? हमारा भाई अकेला बैठा नहीं, भाई ने ढूंढा अपने जैसे एक लंगूर। क्या ढूंढा? ना बोलूंगा तो बोरॉन अपने जैसा एक और बोरॉन ढूंढता है और उसके साथ बनाता है बॉन्ड। जेम्स बॉन्ड नहीं, बॉन्ड। अब दो दोस्त आपस में बॉन्ड बनाएंगे, उसे क्या करेंगे? केला हो जाएगा सर। बहुत शानदार जवाब, केला हो जाएगा और बनेगा बनाना बॉन्ड।
Right, so he's trying to explain the concept of engineering by setting some context. Of course, his approach was little offensive, which I do not support. But then, yes, he was trying to explain the concept relating with the students and so on and so forth. So I think it is possible. It is very much possible.
but if I may add on to this question, how much of time it takes to prepare for a session? Suppose the session is 1 hour or 1 hour and 30 minutes. How much time it takes you to prepare and find out the stories that is relevant to the session?
I would say one thing, because I have a strong desire to use stories. So subconsciously, they are always there in my mind. And what happens, I have a session tomorrow. I will watch something happening on TV and suddenly I realize that, look, this is what I can use in the class. Right? But yes, if you are searching for the stories, it may not work. Or you must have width must be very, very big. For example, when I mentioned initially reading about all the literature, I can tell you that is a great help. Right? You have read the story from Nandan, from Parag, from Chandamama, right? From Premchand stories, and that breadth greatly helps you to recollect any story that you think you have to use in a particular class. Right? But I think more than that, if you have that desire, subconsciously it gets registered in your mind. And suddenly some spark comes. Okay, I think that story will be very relevant here. But yes, it takes time, and I cannot specify in terms of the amount of time it takes. There was one very interesting video of a guy who teaches physics, and he says, for my one class, I take 1 week to prepare. And he also said to the audience, don't tell my colleagues because they will kill me. Right? So it takes time, it's not easy.
But do you have, also visit some resources, some online things? Suppose I want to prepare myself. I want to, deliver few stories. How to start? I mean, this, I have not done it. What are the resources available?
Fantastic thing. Today you have WhatsApp. And what do you get on WhatsApp? Right? If you are a part of any group, I can tell you, your WhatsApp message will be flooded by the stories. Right? And therefore, we have started calling this as WhatsApp University. Right? It is the biggest resource of stories. If you are a member of some 4 or 5 groups, every day you will have 15 to 20 stories available to you. Right? But anyway, typically, if we want to talk about some literature on this, right, I would say, for example, there is a book, Stories for Work, The Essential Guide to Business Storytelling, right, by Gabriela Dolan, talks about all those things. So this particular reference, for example. Then another book here, I'm sure if we want, we can share those links with the participants. Or even if necessary, if the session is being recorded, they should be able to see all these things, right, available on their screen. Yeah. And then all these resources, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Wired for a Story, like story terms structure, business storytelling for dummies, and so on and so forth. And this one, for example, economics. So when you ask me the question, do we have stories on economics? Right, there is a guy who has written a book with the title Economic Fables. Right? So there are resources available.
I got an interesting question.
Yeah.
As you said, the classes, there will be variation among the participants, right? How do you handle difficult students? They will stuck to one point. This is my interpretation. They will not agree to what you want to drive.
Say again, I just missed your point. Again, can you please?
How do you handle some students or participants who are outliers? Means they're so rigid, they don't want to accept your view. They stuck to their own views. And this is my interpretation. I don't agree to what you are saying.
Okay.
How do you...
See, as an instructor, we are not there to force our opinion on them. Right? They hold a particular view. They are free to hold that particular view. Right? The whole idea of discussion is to generate consensus. But in spite of this, if there are some people who say that I hold to this view, you say, yes, your point is taken, right? But let's take a vote from the class. Right? A class of 60, 59 people say that this is right, and you are saying this is right. You have a choice. You want to decide whether you want to be part of this group or you want to be holding your own opinion. Right?
All right.
Professors, sorry to interrupt. I just want to inform everybody that we are left with
1 minute.
7 more minutes.
1 minute. Yeah, sorry, Ankita, once again, please.
Yes, sure.
You were saying something, I missed that part.
Yeah, I just wanted to inform everyone here that we are left with 7 minutes. So yeah, you can continue with the question and answer round. I just wanted to keep everyone informed.
No, we have started this question and answer round. So I am picking up the questions put in the chat. And actually,
so by the time you pick up the question, let me one thing as a part of the discussion, just want to share this part with you. What I'm saying is, for me, a story means anything. Right? This can be myths, metaphors, folk tales, fairy tales, right? Historical events. I'm okay with anything. Right? I don't take a very narrow view of the stories. Right? And second, why stories are useful. Right? I wrote one article in this journal, Development and Learning in Organization, Acquisition and Retention of Learning, Use of Stories in Executive Development Program. And what we wrote in this article was that stories, they inspire, they entertain audience. Each listener can easily see himself in a story immediately. Stories help participants transfer the excitement to their peers and subordinates. The stories often become the starting point for bonding between the participants who come from different disciplines. Stories are a convincing way to communicate intricate ideas in a minimum possible time. Now, when I say in the minimum possible time, and also when we are talking about the values, just 1 2-minute video.
Either second best to Blue Jacket. What is your name? Alexis. Please leave my lecture room. I don't want to give you one of my lectures ever again.
I don't understand.
I am not going to ask a second time. Thank you. Why are there laws? What are laws for? One. Social order.
To protect the person's personal life. So you can rely on the government.
Justice. I was. So why didn't any of you protest? Why didn't any of you try and stop it? Why did you want to prevent this injustice? See, what you have just learned, you wouldn't have understood in 1,000 hours.
So what he's saying is, what you have learned in few minutes, you will not be able to learn in thousands of hours of lecture. And see how strong message is being communicated through that story. Right? Okay. Yes.
So then I got an interesting question. The question is, the question is, we have access to multiple media, right? And we know a lot of stories. How do I ensure the novelty in the stories?
See, it is all trial and experiment. You use a story in the class, sometimes it may not work. Right? Just imagine it is just like just like, for example, when a producer director, they make a movie, they assume that it is going to be a big success. Right? Imagine Mera Naam Joker, right? But it was a big disaster. So it is by trial and error we learn what works, what does not work.
I think that's all for today.
Okay, wonderful.
I want to complete. So in case anyone having any questions, please write to us. We'll pass it on to Professor Jain and try to find out some ways to post the answers. Thank you all for your evening time. And thanks, Professor Jain, for sharing your time and telling us about the storytelling and the preparations you make and the beauty of communicating the concepts through storytelling. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks all.
Thanks to you, Sushant, and thanks to IIM Bangalore, right, CTL team, and also to all the participants, right, for being here. Extremely honored to be part of this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, professors. Thank you, everyone. Due to time constraints, we have to close the session, but we would be back with some interesting topics and webinars on some interesting issues. So, yeah, keep watching our page. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.